Hello, magical people. My name is Lou, and today my offering for you is a pick a card reading with messages from Chiron. Who is Chiron, you might be asking? And I'm going to say that I haven't really super looked into it yet, and I will be. But here's where we are right now. What I know of Chiron is that in mythology, I'm not even sure if it's Greek or Roman, but in mythology, there was a centaur, I believe it was, named Chiron, who was a renowned healer. And I don't remember the exact details of the story. Stay tuned for part 2 of this video. But what I do recall is that at some point he became wounded, and it's a very sad story in the telling of the details, like the emotional undertone of sadness is all that remains in my memory of that story right now. But through some sad circumstance, he became a magnificent healer who was unable to heal himself. I also know that Chiron, I don't know exactly how or what it is in terms of astrological things. And again, stay tuned for part 2. I'll have actual information then. But I do know that Chiron is one of the things that shows up in our natal charts. So, okay. That's the information that I'm aware of outside of myself. And earlier today, I was meditating, and I was just meditating specifically with the kind of intention of sort of connecting with my guides. And there was one regular who showed up, who always shows up. And then there was another figure that showed up, and it was Chiron. And the message that Chiron had initially for me was that as the wounded healer, he wanted to remind me of the distinction between the words wounded and the words unhealed. And I just thought that that was kind of interesting, and it has kind of stuck with me for the last few hours, and I've just been sort of ruminating a little bit on what that distinction is. And, obviously when you say wounded, that means that there has been a wound received, right? But we're all wounded in some way, and we usually heal. Like the scrapes and cuts that I got as a child when I was learning how to walk or ride a bike or whatever have long since passed away from being an active part of my body because they have healed. So healing is something that we do all of the time. So the other message that I got from, or one of the questions that I had sort of had in my mind when I was sitting down to meditate was to ask my guide specifically about like what reading I should do for you all. I'd known that I'd wanted to do a pick a card reading, and I'd known that, I think I'm probably going to do this anyways. I'd wanted to do one around the upcoming supermoon that we have coming up in March. But I also haven't actually taken any action on that yet. So I was wondering why. And so in this communication with this Chiron figure today in my meditation, it also came to be that should be the subject of the pick a card reading for you all, is what messages Chiron wants to share with you about your wounding and your healing, because we are all wounded and we are also healers. So I sat down tonight just to do a short, and so didn't have any intention really of doing a full reading. I know in some ways how the reading will look, or I was shown that I'll be picking a couple of tarot cards from 3 different decks. There will be 3 different piles, so each pile will have 6 cards from 3 different decks in it. And then there will also be a couple of oracle cards. I also know that before I sit down to do that reading, I do want to do a little bit of more research on the mythology of Chiron and the astrological figure of Chiron and how that plays in. So when I actually sit back down to do the pick a card reading, you will notice that I'm going to be wearing different clothes. That's because it's going to be tomorrow. But for some reason, I felt really called to get this introduction under my belt tonight. So stay tuned for part 2. Hello, magical people, and welcome to part 2 of this Chiron Messages Pick a Card reading. So, as promised, I did look into it a little bit more, and so Chiron, it is Greek mythology, and he was immortal because he was a son of a god. And of course, with most mythology, there are varying theories, so I encourage you to do your own research. This is not by any means intended to be a singular point of information about this mythological feature. But anyways, so Chiron is part of Greek mythology, and he was a centaur, and he was distinct from many of the, or all of the other centaurs who were kind of considered to be not refined. And so one of the things that made Chiron different is, well, one, like I said, he was the offspring of gods. So he was very learned, he was very wise, and he was very, very much a teacher and a healer as well. And so essentially he taught many of the mythological figures that you've probably heard of, including Hercules. Now, like I said, I'm no expert on any of this, but as the story goes, there was an event. I don't recall the specific event it was, but there was an event there. There ended up being fighting that happened, and Hercules was there, and Hercules accidentally shot, which also, back up for just a moment, Hercules is the Roman variation of Heracles. So I'm sort of mashing up the Roman and the Greek here. My bad. I'm sorry. Like I said, no expert. But so Chiron had been a teacher of Heracles, and then sometime later they are at an event together, fighting ensues, and Heracles accidentally shoots Chiron with an arrow that is, the tip is, had been treated with the poison of the Hydra. Now, Chiron, being immortal, couldn't die. And yet the poison of the Hydra, this was also a wound that couldn't heal. So he was in perpetual pain and unable to die from the pain. There are varying stories about the way that this story ended. Some of them regard Chiron's immortality being traded for Prometheus's, I don't know. Like I said, again, I'm not an expert. And some of them say that Chiron gave up his immortality because the pain was so great, and that Zeus allowed that to happen. So that's kind of the mythology of Chiron, is that he was a respected teacher and oracle and wise person and healer. And then on a personal level, he experienced this wound that he couldn't heal that ended up being to his ultimate demise. Now, in astrology, again, there are varying theories, but in astrology, some people say that Chiron is an asteroid. Some people say that it's a, I can't remember the correct terminology. We're just going to say baby planet. Maybe it's dwarf planet. Anyhow, whatever it is, it's a little planet in some people's opinions, and it's an asteroid in other people's opinions. And I don't know, and I have no opinion on which of those is more accurate. But speaking to its meaning, so you can find calculators out there on the internet for free, but if you look up what zodiac sign your Chiron is in, then that will point you in a direction of a deep wound that you are invited to heal in this life, so that you can actualize your soul and spirit on a different level. I looked at my Chiron today, and I know I've done this before over and over and over again. It doesn't stick in. It doesn't sink in all of the way when it comes to the many, many aspects of a natal chart. But I did look mine up again today, and it's interesting because it certainly did resonate. So my Chiron is in Aries. And Aries is, of course, the statement of I am. So what does this mean? What this means is that people who have their Chiron in Aries may actually struggle with their own internal sense of self and worthiness. And that has certainly been a big part of my journey. And what's interesting is when I first started doing tarot several years ago now, although not too many years ago, it was part of this bigger arc that I've been on in this part of my life, about purpose and about finding the self and about learning to love the self in a true and authentic way. And so what has kind of shown up as a part of that journey is me doing these kinds of readings for people. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but a lot of times my readings will focus primarily on the journey of the self. I rarely do relationship readings or the like. I'm not opposed to them, and I have done them before, and I probably will again. Ooh, I just kicked the stand with the camera on it. Sorry about that. But typically, my readings tend to sort of focus around one's journey of the soul and the self. So I just found that really interesting, and it made me really, really excited to do that reading. So I've got a couple of different oracle decks here. I've got 3 tarot decks here, and I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to say. I'm sure there was, but I didn't take any notes. So here we are. If you are interested in having a reading, all of the information about how to do that will be in the description box below. If you wouldn't mind liking if you like and subscribing if you are so called, that would be amazing. It really does help the channel. I think I'm up to 270 subscribers right now. I just wanted to say a gigantic thank you to every single one of you. I really appreciate you being here and being interested in the messages that I have to share. Any other channel stuff that I should say? Oh, if you have a suggestion for a pick a card reading that you would like to make, then you can reach out to be my email, which is also going to be in the description box below. Or if you want to just leave that information in a comment below, that is also fine. I am always looking for new things to do readings about that will be resonant for you guys and will be something that you are interested in hearing about. So please don't hesitate to make suggestions or recommendations. I think that's it. Yeah. So for group 1, if we could please have 2 cards from this deck. And then we will also be taking 2 cards from this deck. Oh, I guess I should have made some channel announcements or whatever. So I'm just going to do that real quick. Okay, so now 2 cards for group 1, please, from this deck. There's 1, 2, and 2 cards from this deck, please. All right, and then we're going to take 1 of these. And 1 of these. All right, so now for group 2, 2 from this deck, please. podcast. Sometimes you need to shuffle for a minute for the one to speak to you to make its way to your attention, and other times it happens right away. And now group 3. Oop. Right. Okay, now we've got our 3 piles for reading 1, reading 2, and reading 3. Oh, also, before I dive into the individual readings, as always, please take what resonates and leave the rest. All right, and with that, let's dive right into reading 1 and see what we've got. We have the buffalo. We also have free will. Get out of your cocoon. Ooh, we have the Lover's card. The Keeper of Spells, which is otherwise known as the Knight of Wands. We have the Fool card. Ooh. The Page of Pentacles. This is a really beautiful group 1. And then we also have the Knight of Swords and the 7 of Swords. All right, so before I do anything else, I was kind of shown this picture of me actually reading. The first card that I pulled out is from the Animal Spirit book, the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit. And so I saw myself actually reading out of here. So let's see. Buffalo, this is obviously an earth card. So that is a cute little fella. Almost looks a little bit like a capybara in that picture, doesn't it? Oh my God, just so adorable, so adorable. So let's see what the book has to say about the buffalo. Where are you, buffalo? Here we go. Grounded yet heavenly, practical yet spiritual. The hooves of the mighty buffalo are grounded in the earth, yet its heart and mind rise toward heaven. The buffalo sees challenge, hardship, or a bump in the road as an opportunity for upliftment. Therefore, the buffalo does not fear death, illness, or misfortune. Its gentle eyes look to the road ahead, trusting every turn. May we all experience this elusive yet life-changing bliss from time to time, and may we allow this card to remind us that life is a precious gift. When in balance, trusting in pure presence. When out of balance, restless or lacks gratitude. And to bring into balance, prayer or bhakti. That is really interesting. So as messages from Chiron, the first thing is, you are meant to enjoy this life. You are meant to ground your successes into reality. And it's like there's something saying here that your soul contract, that this isn't aspirational, that this is something that you you didn't sign up for more than you could handle. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we also have this free will card getting out here, which is telling me that you have a lot more autonomy to move beyond whatever your core wounds are, whatever woundedness that you have experienced. You are meant to actually move beyond it. And like I said, we also have the Lovers, the King of Wands, the Page of Pentacles, the Fool, the Seven of Swords, and the Knight of Swords. So right off the bat, I'm seeing that in addition to a couple of major arcana being the Lovers and the Fools, again, major arcana usually speaks to the larger arcs in our life. And those are two of the more easy and not easy, especially Fool energy is definitely not easy. What's the word I'm looking for? The vibe of these cards is high-end, rather than it being about letting go and moving through difficulty. These energies speak of possibility and partnership, and not just partnership for the sake of partnership, but partnership in a way that is mutually beneficial and mutually fulfilling. So first thing I'm seeing that. Second thing I'm seeing, out of 6 cards, we have 3 of them are court cards, all in different suits. So we have a King of Wands, which of course is all about mastering that energy of our own inspiration and our own intuition and being able to use it wisely. It's like, look at this guy here. He's like, he's got this huge whirl of fiery substance, and like he's basically like, that's actually a dragon. He's got this fire pouring out of his hand, and it's like taking the will of your intention and directing it responsibly with purpose and meaning. We also have the Knight of Swords. Now, this energy is pretty fast moving. It's pretty impulsive at times, and it can also be a little sharp. So I feel like there's a kind of tempering around this energy that's also wrapped up with your own healing process. And again, this can be on either an internal level or an external level. So this could be that sometimes when you are moving too fast, you end up coming off as rude to people and they don't really understand that. Or, of course, this could also be the energy of the way you engage with yourself internally and not listening to yourself thoroughly, cutting yourself off, and just being in a place of almost resistance. But again, being a court card, there's like this leveling up that's happening. And then, of course, we have the Page of Pentacles, which is grounding things in reality. It's a slow moving energy, where this energy is very fast and this energy is really quite slow and is a lot more about consistency. So it's interesting, when I first put these cards down on the table, I just happened to put them down where they were kind of like sitting like this. So I feel like one of the messages that Chiron wants to send through to you is that this is the aspiring energy that you are working towards. That energy of taking the 2 less mature energies of either being very practical and very slow moving, or being less practical and very fast moving, and you're being asked to mature those energies and merge them into this magical, transformative, very stable, yet very intuitive and very inspirational energy, you know? So another thing that's interesting is that, okay, so Swords is air, Pentacles is earth, and wands or spells in this deck is fire. So there's, again, a call for taking the disparate pieces of information and transforming them into this new energy that will allow you to begin this new journey, and this new journey that has a lot of promise to it. So, I feel like overall, what Chiron wants to tell you is that you've kind of signed up for a big task in this life. Like, this is a lot of big energy, and that may feel very overwhelming at times. And you may question your own ability to have free will. But the subtext of this is get out of your cocoon. So I feel like also, one of the reasons why you may not feel like you do have agency or autonomy to change is because of fear that is sort of wrapped up in stepping out of your cocoon. And that's all part of it too. That's all part of it too. So like, you will find that if you can challenge the space of that comfy, cozy cocoon and get into a place that is a little bit less comfortable, then what it will actually bring you is a lot more expansive energy. But that, again, that expansive energy brings you back to this very realistic, very grounded place. So it's weird that that phrase, nothing ventured, nothing gained, is coming to me, which, again, I feel like that statement really kind of points to fear in a way. I'd be curious if group one, you would comment below and let me know if group one is the one that resonated for you, and these messages are feeling like they are speaking to you, this need to take the extremes and merge them into something new and productive that's going to be just amazing. If this energy of wanting to have signed up to start a whole new thing in this life and sort of move beyond the extremes, into this grounded place. If any of this is resonating for you, I would be curious to know what your Chiron astrological sign is, and if in doing any reading about it, you found that kind of resonated for you. I feel like there's a connection between these two cards as well. And if you kind of look at the color palette, and just the way the different shapes line up, I think that there is this yearning within you on some level to step out into something new, and that there's a lot of internal chatter that you may experience. Maybe it doesn't even come up for you as fear. Maybe it comes up for you more as self-doubt, or not believing that you could do the thing that you actually want to do, so immediately talking it down, or just sort of like self-negating in a way, is kind of the energy of that. But there really is, like, the reason why you keep thinking about it, even though it is something that makes you have feelings, which, if you scratch below those other feelings, if it's not fear, if you scratch below and scratch below and scratch below, you will eventually get to fear of some sort. I think you'll find. But that regardless of that fear, there's a reason why you're still being called to make these changes and try something new, and you're still wanting to move closer to taking that leap of faith. And it's just, there's such a surrender in the art of this card. A lot of decks will show the fool stepping off the cliff, like stepping forward off of the cliff. And here, this card is more about surrendering to the energies and trusting that when you allow yourself to fall into the energy that you need to be in, you will be held by it. So I feel like maybe for some of you too, trust is going to come up, and maybe that's trust of the self or trust of the world in which we live in that may not feel very supportive to you for some reason or another. There's millions of reasons. But whether it's fear or whether it's a lack of trust in some way, Chiron, message from Chiron is going to be, or is to allow this to heal in yourself. Allow yourself to be the allow yourself to embrace the transformative energy of that keeper of spells, who is so masterful of taking the different aspects that he's accumulated on his journey and creating something that is beautiful and powerful and awe-inspiring. And you have that energy within you. So best of luck to group 1. I would love to hear your story if you're willing to share it. And if you don't want to share it publicly, you're also more than welcome to send me an email, which again, that will be in the information box below. Until next time, please don't forget to be kind and gentle with yourself. Hello, group 2. If you have selected the number 2 or the second reading, I didn't pick any tokens this time, then this, in fact, is for you. So I'm going to just start off telling you all the cards, and then we'll dive right in. So first, we have the Firefly. And in a moment, I will be reading from the book so that we can get a little bit more information about the messages coming to you through that card. And again, these are all messages from Chiron, who is the wounded healer, telling you about your own wounding and your own healing. So let's see. For an oracle card, we have Beyond the Ego, Surrender to the Flow of Life. That is a beautiful message. Ooh, I'm saying things already. Okay. We also have the Wise Woman, who is also known as the High Priestess. We have the Liar, group 2, which is known as the Devil in other decks. We have the 8 of Wands. We have the Queen of Swords. Oh, group 2. We also have the 3 of Swords and the Hermit card. I don't know that any of you doubt it, but if you do, I am just here to tell you that you are meant to be a healer, not just of yourself, but of others as well. And that can show up in 100 million, bazillion, trillion, cajillion kind of ways. But regardless, you are a healer, my friend. Okay, so what am I looking up? I am looking up Firefly, which is, of course... Oh, it's an air sign. Interesting. I guess I can see that. I would have thought maybe it was a fire sign, but that is definitely the alchemical symbol for air. So, Firefly, inspired and fantastic yet fleeting. The Firefly contains the light of 1,000 stars. It's pure, radiant, and illuminating. This high-frequency charge cannot be sustained for long. Therefore, the Firefly card indicates a moment of inspiration or awakening that quickly fades if we do not catch it. There is Firefly energy behind every poem, song, and invention. Our job is to be ready to harness this creative spirit when it graces our path. What can you do to support this precious and elusive light? When in balance, it writes, creates, and brainstorms. When out of balance, it feels burnt out or dull. And to bring into balance, write a poem or draw. And I would say, I would add to that, and because just, writing and drawing isn't for everybody. Not everybody does that. I don't actually really do either of those things. But that doesn't mean I don't create. I create in a ton of ways. So I would say if you are feeling like your Firefly energy is currently out of balance, then I mean, if writing a poem or drawing is something that resonates for you, then terrific. But if it's not, just find any other way to create. And it's sort of a perpetual motion machine. If we can, that's not the right word, but if we can create a little bit, then that will foster that flare of inspiration within us. Okay, so group 2, Chiron. This is a tough one, like you signed on for a lot here, because there is a call to acknowledge the liar that exists. And in other decks, this is known as devil energy, the devil, rather. So this is the energy of tying ourselves to things that don't serve us. This can be, oftentimes, it can show up in the way of addictions or unhelpful or maladaptive behaviors. So, and interestingly, I'm kind of, I'm hearing that you would be best served by not judging your own devil energy too harshly. Those addictions or maladaptive behaviors were created by a part of yourself that needed to create them to help you cope with something that you weren't capable of coping with at the time. So rather than having judgment against yourself for those parts, part of your healing journey is going to be about learning to release the judgment that you have around it and just seeing it for what it is. And even in some ways, and again, take what resonates and leave the rest, but in some ways, having gratitude for those things that showed up to get you through the moment, because they did help you to survive. And even though they ended up being maladaptive or not helpful or not serving you or creating situations where you end up in unhealthy relationship dynamics, even though this is something to be healed, the initial reason that it showed up was to serve you. It's just no longer doing that. And you have leveled up in terms of your skills to cope and your ability to value and find worth for yourself and of yourself. And so it's time to see these things without the judgment, but while objectively acknowledging that they don't work for you, that these things aren't working for you, and instead to change that into this energy of the wise woman. And the wise woman, again, in other decks, other traditional Rider-Waite decks, is also known as the High Priestess. So this is stepping into your intuitive self. And of course, this devil energy, whether it's behaviors or thoughts or thought patterns, this energy in general blocks us from being able to be in touch with our intuitive self. So there is a real call here to heal within so that you can embrace and embody that spirit of healing. This is less about actively doing as allowing this to happen. And we have here too the Three of Swords and the Hermit card. And I feel like for some of you, your wounding or the things that maybe brought about that maladaptive behavior or however that shows up for you, it's because your heart was broken. It's because you were wounded and, pierced in the very heart of yourself. And this is deeply painful energy. This is the energy of, in short, this card is often called the heartbreak card. So, it makes sense, what happened here. And that what's interesting too about this energy is that it is very real. It is very, very real. And yet there is an aspect of it that even though when we are in that space of heartbreak, it feels like we are heartbroken, it is perhaps more accurate to say that the energy of heartbreak is infiltrating our space. And sometimes we need to let that happen. But we also have the capability of going within and finding our own light, the part of ourselves that remains unharmed, that remains untraumatized, that remains just perfect and bright. And so I feel like, okay, there's so much here. I feel like one of the things that Chiron wants you to know is that to assist you in moving through this energy and this big life lesson that you have for yourself here, it's going to be a really big part of it for you to, by going within and separating out from that heartbreak energy and reconnecting to your own inner just beauty and perfection and wholeness, that you are going to find your own truth. And then by communicating that truth out into the world, that's going to be a pretty big arc. So, like I said it right at the very beginning here, that, whether you know it or not, you are healers. And we are all healers in a way. Like, I personally kind of believe that all healing is self-healing. Even if a doctor prescribes me a pill to take, then it is me taking that pill that is allowing the healing to have. And I don't, just a quick aside, I don't want to necessarily equate healing with taking pills, because that is not an accurate representation of how I feel. It was just the first and easiest go-to that I could think of. Anyways, but as I've mentioned, group 2, you are definitely healers, but beyond the way that we are all healers, like, I feel like your message, your healing arc is meant to be spoken out to the world so that other people can learn from it and can benefit from the way that you have interpreted your own journey. Because, of course, human experiences are human, and we are all human. So when you talk about your own experiences, you're tapping into things that we all experience. Even if the particulars are different, the energies are the same. Like, for example, again, a real easy one here is that you fall in love with another person. That is completely and utterly unique to you and that other person. And yet there have been just untold billions and billions and billions and billions of people who have fallen in love. So it is both universal and particularist. And there's something about your journey, as particular as it is to you, that is also resonant on a universal level. And there's something in this life that is part of your healing journey. Like, make no mistake about it, this is not the message of you heal and then you tell your story. This is more that the telling of the story is part of the healing. So it's like they're concurrent in a time. Like, this isn't, you check one off a list and then you check another off a list. This is about the way you actually sort of incorporate those two aspects, which I hope that makes sense to some of you. That feels very difficult and vague, but I'm hoping that it resonated enough for some of you that you will spend some time thinking about it, maybe journaling about it, and figuring out exactly, particularly, what that means to you. And I think also, one thing that when I first started to put down the cards, the first thing that I noticed is that I put them down like this, because I'm not always very good about being super tidy about the way that I put them down. But so beyond the ego, surrender to the flow of life. And we have this figure whose head is kind of surrounded by this glow. And then we also had this Firefly card talking about that sort of divine inspiration that can be the jumping off point for some real beauty, but that it is also very fleeting. So if tapping into your own creative juices is something that is difficult for you, then again, I think that this is a little bit about surrender. And surrender did also come up in group 1's reading, so feel free to go watch that one. Always feel free to watch 1, 2, 3, however many there are. Take what resonates, leave the nest, leave the rest. Leave the nest? I mean, leave the nest. Maybe that works too. But surrendering to the flow of life, surrendering to what is, and again, stepping out of that place of judgment, because it's not only just judgment around what we do that can show up. Like, have you ever, maybe this won't resonate with anybody, but I suspect it will. Have you ever had a really cool idea and then like immediately internally before you could even say it out loud, there was a part of you that was like, that's stupid. Don't even say that. That judgment that comes up in that moment is what sort of blocks our own creativity. So again, sometimes it's just about taking the baby steps and doing something that is a little bit creative and letting yourself bask in the enjoyment of that. And then basically stoking the firefly, or stoking the fire of the firefly, so that you can let that inspiration move within you. And as you sort of embody more of that that intuitive, inspired, creative space, then that is also, we've only got so much room, right? So the more you are full with that creative, intuitive, inspired energy, the less room for the judgment to show up. So it's kind of like, yeah, taking baby steps, learning how to walk, and also strutting your stuff and letting others be witness to your journey and your truth. You know, this 8 of Wands is all about communication. This card is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is also all about communication. So there's this, and again, being wands, you know, pointing back to that fire energy, that intuitive energy, that inspired creative energy, and learning how to use that and understand your own personal truth so that you can communicate that out to the world. Group 2, this is some really powerful stuff. I would love to hear about your thoughts and your journey. And if you aren't comfortable leaving that information publicly in the comments below, you can also send me an email. My email address will be in the description box below, along with all the other information. And I just really would love to hear from you. I just love to hear your thoughts. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for taking the time. This is really, really beautiful energy, and you have a lot to offer. Please do not forget to be kind and gentle with yourself, and I will see you soon. And then we clear the table and the space of group 2's energy, so we can tune in with group 3. Hello, group 3. If you selected number 3, so awkward, then this is your reading. So first, I'm going to just tell you what all the cards are, and I'm going to read a blurb out of the Animal Spirit Guidebook for whichever animal spirit card I turn over for you, and then we will dive right into it. Ooh, we have the octopus card. Water. Adorable. I love octopuses, they're so smart. We also have return to joy. We are here to experience joy. The image that just popped into my mind before I even turn over any of the cards was of somebody with a wound that is healing fine on its own. Like if you just left it, it's healing fine. But what I kind of see is that this person's like literally poking at it. And poking at it, and this card is reminding you, wants to remind you that you aren't here to suffer. Like, suffering is part of life, that is undeniable, but that is not the sole purpose of your existence here. That's just something that is going to happen that will allow you to put that energy of joy and gratitude into better perspective. So, if you are someone who kind of engages in self-defeating behavior where you're metaphorically sticking your finger in your own wound and allowing it to, which doesn't allow it to heal, then, Chiron just wants to let you know that you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. You can just let it heal on its own, because you are meant to experience joy and not just suffering and pain. Okay, so we also have suspension, which is the Hanged Man. And then we have the Forest Lord, which is the Emperor. Ooh, guys. We have the Ace of Pentacles. Beautiful. We also have Three of Wands. Ooh, big aspirations here. Big aspirations and looking far. Looking far. We have the Tower. And we also have the Star. Oh my God, group 3. This is amazing. And also just like, not for nothing, but out of 6, I feel like this has been a set of powerful readings. You're welcome to go back and, watch group 1 or group 2, but each one of them had a disproportionate number of either court cards or major arcana cards for the small number of tarot cards that I am using in this reading. So it feels like this is a very powerful thing. Chiron, like I said in the intro, either part 1 or today, I can't remember, but we are all wounded and we are all healers. And so I can see how these messages would be universal, but I wasn't expecting them to be quite so powerful. So I want to thank you for showing up with that powerful energy. Okay, let's see, magical people, what we got to say about the octopus, which is, again, I think I maybe already said it, but in case I didn't, that is water. All right. Reaching, yearning, lacking boundaries and direction. Ah, interesting. The octopus signifies a wonderfully perceptive mind paired with a lack of healthy boundaries. Unfortunately, this results in well-intended but messy relationships. The octopus entwines itself into other people's business and shares their own without restraint. They believe that that's what it means to be close. If you notice after spending time with someone that you feel drained or uneasy, the essence of octopus is at play. Begin to establish healthy boundaries. Be patient and firm. It may be a very old habit to change. When in balance, the octopus is interested, engaged, and intelligent. When out of balance, they are needy or clingy or lacking courage. And to bring into balance, give oneself space, and also talk therapy. This is really interesting because this is so reiterated in the tarot cards that came out. Okay, talking about giving one space. The suspension card, the Hanged Man card in other decks, is all about taking a step back and putting yourself on hold and in a place of suspension where you attempt to shift your perspective. And no word of a lie, the Emperor card is all about boundaries and healthy boundaries and having respect for the things that are both within the boundary and outside of the boundary. So, I feel like a lot of times the Emperor may get a bad rap because in modern age, the idea of an emperor is just a little bit out of date with the way things currently run. But the energy of the emperor, like in this deck, he's called the Forest Lord, and he's got his familiar there, just calmly sitting behind him, and he is not a emperor of war or an emperor of inflicting harm on others. He is a protective lord of the forest. He wants to keep his subjects safe and well. And the best way that one can do that is with boundaries. And this is Again, this can be energy that is solely focused inward, or it can be energy that is outward, because sometimes it's about the boundaries that we have with other people and maybe being too much a part of covert contracts, where we sort of enter into dynamics not being necessarily conscious of them. But this can also be in regards to the self and not having healthy boundaries internally with the various aspects of the self. Like we talk a lot about the inner child. That's probably fairly familiar lingo to a lot of people. In my opinion, the inner child is definitely there, definitely real. And let me tell you, little Lou gets feelings sometimes. But there's also different aspects of ourselves, and trying to keep healthy boundaries. Like, let's just take little Lou. Let's just take the internal child as an example. So it is important with children, inner or outer, I suppose, that we show them love and compassion, and also show up to be responsible parents or stewards for them. So if a kid loves cake, it's, even though the child's perspective may be, well, my parent was mean to me because I didn't get to eat all of the cake. We as adults know that children shouldn't eat all of the cake because that's not healthy. So it's kind of having a healthy boundary, even within ourselves. Like sometimes little Lou is really in the field and she just wants to drink a giant milkshake. And sometimes I will do that, but I can't let that happen all of the time because I need better nutrition than that. So that's an internal boundary that I have within myself. So it can show up in a huge amount of ways, of course. But it's interesting that there's this energy of like, you're supposed to return to joy. You're supposed to experience joy. That is, you are entitled to experience joy in this life. And that you may find that learning how to separate your energy out from others and how to have healthy boundaries might be one of the things that sort of gets you in the way of experiencing that joy. It's kind of like, okay, let's take these two cards next, because we have the Tower and the Star. And on the one hand, it kind of feels like they are very different sort of energies, but they work so beautifully together. Because let me paint you this picture. You're sitting in a field, and before you, there is this tower that was just, it wasn't well built. The foundation upon which it stands is clearly degraded and cracked, and metaphorically, perhaps this is those covert contracts that we're talking about, right? And as you sit there in the field, the tower starts to fall and it starts to crumble. And it does that because it's not built on a foundation that can withstand the weight put on it, because it wasn't engineered in a way where overt contracts were in place. And pardon my mixing metaphors, I'm hoping that this makes sense to you. But anyways, you're sitting in this field and you're watching this tower fall, because the tower must fall, because it cannot stand. It cannot stand. It's already beyond being whole. It can't be whole because of the way it was created. So the tower falls, and there's just a mess everywhere, and it's like, how can I even move through this energy of everything changing so radically that this tower is now gone? And it's messy for a while, and it's dusty. There's cloud dust. And then slowly with time, the dust literally settles. And suddenly you notice that the tower was obstructing your view of this beautiful, bright star right in front of you. And you never would have known it was there. You never would have known that that star that you want to wish on, that star that contains your wish, that star that is birthing the energy of your wish into the universe at this moment, you never would have known that that existed. You never would have been able to witness it if that tower hadn't fallen. So even though there is discomfort and there is sometimes pain that comes with the tower falling, what is left in its wake is so much more beautiful than that broken tower could have ever been. So now let's take for your last two tarot cards and break these two down. So we have the Three of Wands and we have the Ace of Pentacles, and this is what Chiron is saying. Like, the tower's got to fall. Find your own star. Have your boundaries. Learn to have discernment between you and everything around you. And then choose the path that you want to move forward towards with intention, and plant your seeds in the earth and tend them so they can grow. I'm mixing so many dozens of metaphors in this reading. And, it's interesting because, like, each set of cards has a different kind of energy, and I don't know if you can feel it here, but like, there's so much hope and enthusiasm here. And group 3, like, I'm rooting for you. I mean, I'm rooting for everybody. Don't get me wrong. I'm rooting for everybody, but it feels like at this point, at this time, you're on the cusp of some stuff that's pretty big, and I think that you're gonna make some really beautiful things. If you want to tell me your story, I would love to hear it. If you don't want to share it publicly, you're welcome to email me. My email will be in the description box below. And magical people, thank you so much for showing up with your energy and giving me the opportunity to tune into it. Until next time, please don't forget to be kind and gentle with yourselves.